Okay, now that it's 2 minutes after the top of the hour, we will start. So we are thrilled to be here today to talk to you about the Computing Innovations 2020 program. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted at the website. My name is Mark Hill, and I will provide background and setup. Ellen Zagura will then give program highlights. The purpose here is to bring matters to top of mind, or as a computer architect, I would say in cache, so that we can then spend most of the hour with questions and answers. You can submit a question with the Q&A button that's at the bottom, not the chat button. Ann Schwartz-Drobnis will select and read questions for Ellen and me to answer. Before proceeding further, I would like to pass the microphone to Margaret Martinosi, who is the head of NSF-CISE. Margaret.
Thanks, Mark, and hello to all hundreds of you who are out there joining this webinar. So I lead the Computer and Information Science and Engineering Directorate at NSF, and we fund over 85% of the federally funded academic research in computer science in the US. So clearly helping to sustain the CS academic research ecosystem in the US is important to NSF. And when the pandemic's impacts emerged earlier this year, we at CISE immediately started and joined a set of internal and external conversations about how we could help respond and care for our community. I'm here, I want to say a huge thank you to the community members and to the NSFers whose time and energy were instrumental to the timely creation of this fellowship program. So that's Mark, Ellen, Liz, Ann, Andy, Erwin, Nina, Mitra, Jean, and so many others. And these people are committing more of their time and energy to seeing this through. And so for all the PhD students who are on this webinar with worries about their future careers, I want you to see the hard work that these people put in and see it as an indicator of the strength of community that we have in CISE topic areas and the degree to which we take care of each other. These people, we want you to stay in research. We want you to succeed. I hope that comes through. So now more than ever, CISE research topics are central to moving past the health, the economic, and the societal challenges we all face right now. We're all committed to working together to support the health of our early career research pathways so that you folks, the younger members of our community, can be a vibrant part of a CISE research and education community for years to come. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Margaret, and thank you especially for NSF's support of this program. Next slide, please. All right, so as you know, COVID-19 has significantly disrupted many things in our lives, including the academic job market in computing. To go beyond rumors, CRA conducted a survey of its members ending April 1st and saw significant job loss in North America. And things certainly have not gotten better since. And so what we're trying to do here is we're trying to ameliorate the crisis, but then also to try to do some good. And fortunately, we have a great example to build on. So in the wake of the Great Recession, this Computing Innovation Fellows had cohorts of fellows and postdocs in 2009, 2010, and 2011. And this kept a lot of great people in research, and it facilitated their development. It wasn't just treading water with mentors and cohort building activities. And it also helped the computing community to develop some postdoc mentoring best practices, which we hope you all will apply in this program. So that program is a model that we're using, and we're updating it to the COVID-19 realities. Next. So this is from 3 organizations. The Computing Research Association, or CRA. This is a nonprofit organization whose members are mostly North American academic computing units, companies, government labs, and computing societies. Its mission is uniting industry, academia, and government to advance computing research and change the world. The Computing Community Consortium, or CCC, is really a part of CRA, not a separate organization. We're a CRA standing committee largely funded by the National Science Foundation. CCC's mission is catalyzing the research community and enabling the pursuit of innovative high-impact research. And the National Science Foundation, as you should know, is a US federal agency. The CISE Directorate, as Margaret just said, funds much of computing research. Its charter from 1950 is to promote the progress of science to advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and to secure the national defense. So what these organizations have done is then establish some people to work forward. Next. And this is 2B3 committees, currently 2.5 committees. The first is the co-principal investigators who wrote the grant that got funded to do this program. And this is Andrew Burnett, Elizabeth Bradley, Ann Schwartz-Drobnis, myself, Mark Hill, and Ellen Zagura, who is the principal investigator. We also formed a steering committee to give us advice on this. And this includes Bradley, Hill, and Zagura, and also Burnett and Drobnis as ex officio. And the key people we added to this committee are 3 people that were associated with the original CIFellows program, so they can give us experience from 3 different points of view. Arana Balasubramanian was a CI fellow who stayed in academia. Anita Jones was a sage even then, and Stefan Stavage was a mentor. And what we're in the process of doing is forming a selection committee, which will essentially act like a program committee to then get reviews of the applications, and that process is still being determined. So with that, next slide. I will hand it over to Ellen.
Thank you, Mark. And let me add my appreciation to the National Science Foundation and also to all of you who are on the call interested in this program and in the way that it may help further your careers. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about eligibility, and I think there are a number of questions I'm already seeing in the Q&A that relate to eligibility. So let me go through these in terms of the research areas that are under consideration that make you eligible. They're all of those that fall under the umbrella of NSF CISE, and that includes research in computing education. The second eligibility criteria has to do with a window in time, and that window is July 1, 2019 to December 31st, 2020, which obviously hasn't happened yet. And the key is that you must have completed your PhD or your first postdoc within that time window. Understanding that you may not have the piece of paper in hand because that may have to wait for a graduation ceremony to happen. So the piece of paper is not the key piece here. It's the completion of the requirements for the PhD. It's not enough to have defended, because sometimes there's a big gap between defending and turning in the final thesis. The program, and this is coming in part from the fact that it's funded by a U.S. federal agency, therefore meaning that it's federal U.S. taxpayer dollars that fund that are the original source of that money. You must be either a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident, in which case U.S. citizen / permanent resident, in which case you're eligible. Or if you don't fall in that bucket, then having received a PhD at a U.S. institution is the other way that you qualify in this particular criteria. So you'll notice that means that if you received your PhD in a non-U.S. institution and you are not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, then unfortunately you're not eligible. The mentors, this is now eligibility on for the mentor side, must be tenured or tenure track faculty who are employed at a U.S. academic institution. Mentors in industry, while you may seek some who would be additions to your mentor network, they're not eligible to be the mentor that you get paired with in this program. There's another condition here, which is that you may not request as your mentor your PhD advisor. So this is to help make the postdoc experience one that advances your career. And so working with someone else is the best practice for expanding your career. You must do your fellowship at a US institution. So although there's a little subtlety there, we are in recognition of COVID-19 going to allow fellowships that take where they are done remotely, or perhaps done in a hybrid fashion where you would start out remote, remaining where you are. And I don't even know if we call this telecommuting anymore. We just call it working from where we are. And maybe you move to a new location later. So the fellowships associated with the US institution that's providing, essentially hosting you, whether that is physical or not, may not be physical, and especially in the beginning. And you apply with a mentor as a pair. So that matching is something for you to do in this current, as you're planning your application. Next, please. You'll find on the website the application components, and these are near final. We want to get these so that we have all the information we need to make good decisions in the selection, but don't have too much to read and don't have too much to ask you to write. So research proposal with 2 parts to it, an objective and goals piece and a research plan, a fellowship plan that you will write with your mentor, explaining the additional skills and experiences that you will gain. So that's meant to be a collaborative document. It's a good opportunity for you to talk to a mentor about expectations for the postdoc experience. Letter of recommendation from a current research supervisor, another second letter, a letter from the mentor, and then an academic CV, and some additional checklist items that will be relatively straightforward. The academic CV, we're going to ask you to keep it to 2 pages maximum. It's a good skill, and you'll need it if you apply for any NSF funding, to have a 2-page version. I'm going to come back just to say one thing about the intellectual merit and broader impacts. These are 2 standard categories that all NSF proposals must include. So if you'd like to know a little more about what tends to be included under intellectual merit, what that phrase means, what broader impacts means, the NSF materials, and we tell you in the FAQ what that is, have a good description. Next. Okay, so the evaluation criteria. We are in the process of creating a selection committee. I want to clarify, that committee will act like a senior program committee. It depends a little bit which part of computer science you're coming from. There will be a large pool of reviewers who are experts in the various areas that you all will be applying from. Those reviewers will review applications, and then the selection committee, this group of about 8 people, 8 to 10 people, we will handle the process of, after those reviews come in, going through them and working through the decisions about awards. The evaluation will take into account the track record of research accomplishment and the merits of the research proposal. We will also evaluate the merits of the fellowship plan and the mentor's letter and mentor capacity to serve as a strong mentor for the fellowship plan. We will pay attention to diversity, and we will be looking to have breadth across the research areas of CISE. There will be preference given to US citizens and permanent residents. There's a condition that has to do, again, with spreading the love across multiple institutions. And that is captured in this next bullet. No more than 2 fellowships will be awarded to candidates whose PhDs came from the same university, and no more than 2 fellowships to candidates whose mentors are at a given university. So this is this is meant to ensure that this opportunity is spread across people from many institutions, many types of institutions. Next, Helen. And the timeline, we announced this in May, on May 14th. That was a rapid rapid process from the initial idea of doing this to the funding at CRA. We are in the process of refining guidelines. The webinar has been announced. The website is up. Here we are today. In the next several days, week, we will finalize the submission contents, and the application system will go live. We expect about the middle third of June will be the application due date, and then mid to late July as the date for announcing awards. Next, Helen. All right, Mark, is this you or me?
So
or Anne?
I'm gonna take over, although I don't think I need much introduction because we already have well over 100 questions asked. So we are going to go through some questions, try and do our best to answer as many of them as we can. Whatever we don't get to answer, we will be posting a transcript of questions and answers within 48 hours to anyone beyond. So please, I apologize if we don't get to all the questions, but we will do our best. So next slide, please. Also, we are constantly updating the website FAQs. We're trying our best to answer all individual questions, but do please check the website FAQs throughout the process as well. Next. So here are some common questions that I already see a fair number of in the Q&A box, but go ahead. Ellen, a lot of people have asked us about citizenship eligibility. Can you please expand upon that again? Oh, you're muted.
Zoom is helpfully telling me that I'm muted. So I spoke to this. I'll speak to it again because I know it's of a lot of interest. If you are not a US citizen, but you have completed your PhD in the United States, you may apply.
Next question. For Mark, what does it mean to complete the PhD degree?
It means that you've completed all your requirements. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have a diploma in hand or the regents have approved.
Thanks. Next question. I don't see my research area listed. Can I still apply? Ellen?
Yes. So if you feel your research falls under the CISE umbrella, you can select other in the list of research areas and just put a note about what your research area is. Sorry, Anne, go ahead.
I was going to say, related to this, quite a few questions have come up in the chat saying my PhD wasn't in computing, but I'm now doing work in computing. Could you please address that?
Yeah, that's fine. I think the research area that you're naming here is the research area, intended research area of the postdoc.
Thank you. Next question. Will there be a CIFellows 2021 program? We've got lots of people asking about graduating in the spring of 2021. Are they eligible?
The short answer is we don't know. In the Great Recession, as I mentioned, there were 3 years of programs, but past performance is no guarantee of future performance. So we'll find that out next year, depending on how things unfold in many dimensions.
Next question. For the program almost a decade ago, there was an explicit mechanism for matching applicants and mentors. Is there a similar mechanism now? Ellen?
So we gave this some thought, and we decided, based on talking to those who were part of the program last time, not to embark on supporting an explicit mechanism within CRA. It turned out not very many of the CIFellows last time used the matching mechanism, and there are so that was a consideration. There are informal channels, people seeking mentees, mentors, and so looking to social media as potential places for finding this sort of thing would be a good networking practice.
Excellent. Next slide. So again, please continue asking your questions in the Q&A box and we're gonna keep going through them. So for Mark, does my PhD need to be funded by NSF CISE?
No, your PhD does not need to be funded by NSF CISE. As Ellen said, what's really critical is that the CIFellows proposal that you do falls underneath the CISE umbrella. I should also say, by the way, we are going to do our very best to give you clear answers in this webinar, but the definitive rules will be those posted on the FAQ on the website when it's finalized.
Thanks. Next question. Are we allowed to change institutes or mentors during the 2 years of fellowship?
No,
For Ellen?
sorry.
Thank
No.
you. Hello, next question. If we get this fellowship and later get another postdoc on top, can we do two postdocs at the same time?
No, you may not. I believe you could terminate the CIFellows postdoc early and do the other postdoc if you preferred, but you can't have two postdocs simultaneously.
Thank you. Could a postdoc associate affiliated with a CIFellows department but be with a different background, such as urban planning, apply?
So I think that, so the answer to that is yes. You know, you need to make a case that that you're on a computing, a CISE related career path, right? So if it were to appear that this was a sort of brief detour and then back to something that wasn't under a CISE research path, I think that would not make for a strong application. If you can make the case that you're heading towards a CISE research path and the postdoc, which is in an adjacent area, furthers that, I think that's the kind of thing that the reviewers will be looking for.
Thank you. The project proposal that we submit, does it have to be related to COVID-19?
No,
Mark?
it does not have to be related to COVID-19. It has to be related to doing excellent computing research under the CISE umbrella.
Thank you. Can my mentor and host institution be from industry?
No. And let me also answer a question that I see that's related in the Q&A about whether the mentor can be a tenure track faculty member at private research institution that's not a university, such as Cold Spring Harbor Research Lab. I actually think we need to say that we are not sure about this unless Mark gives me some visual symbol. I think this is a corner case we perhaps had not considered. It meets the criteria that it be a tenure track faculty member. So I think we don't want to in real time make a decision about that. So let us hold that question and we will have to get back to you on that.
Excellent. Can a student submit two applications with two different mentors?
Yes.
This might need some more explanation.
I will explain. So the idea is that the applications are evaluated as a student-mentor pair, and it's possible that you could pick two mentors. They may be similar, and your plans may be similar with the two different mentors. Or it's also possible you may apply with two different mentors where you would do very different things with the different mentors. All of those are possible. You're limited to applying with two mentors.
Related, what about co-mentor options?
I guess I'll follow up on that. So officially, this application form requires that you name a specific mentor. If you want to discuss that you have other mentors and co-mentoring options, I think that's a great practice for a career and probably strengthens your proposal. But there's not a formal mechanism to include multiple mentors.
Excellent, thank you. For the award duration, is it possible to do only 1 year instead of 2 years?
This is to me, I'm actually not 100% sure the answer to this question.
So from a procedural standpoint, I can give you the background is the intention is that these are for 2-year positions. If circumstances should change that you have a job opportunity or so forth in the middle of your program and it needs to end early through a good agreement with your mentor, we are able to make that happen and hope that we could use the funding for someone else, but you cannot keep the funding if you then have another opportunity.
Like if you get a tenure track faculty offer, that's fine.
Can I pick another question?
Absolutely, go ahead.
I see some questions from international, I assume for international students, basically saying, is it worth it for me to apply? Absolutely, yes. Okay. The preference for US citizens and permanent residents is not an absolute. It doesn't mean that we will only get to international students after we've, say, exhausted a US citizen permanent resident pool. There are many, many excellent international students that all of us have worked with. And so please do not take away from that the program is in effect not open for international students.
So there are quite a few questions about your mentor, whether it can be the same person as your PhD advisor or your current research advisor, postdoc advisor. So I think we probably need to answer that one again.
Okay, so the mentor for CIFellows cannot be your current mentor in a postdoc or your PhD advisor. This is meant to be not treading water. This is meant to be career building. So you need to step in a somewhat new direction with a new person.
Let me add one additional piece to that. We are open to the mentor being at the same institution where you currently are, but not having been your PhD or postdoc advisor. So just to use an example from my own field of networking, there's a lot of interesting work happening in the intersection of programming languages and networking. Applying to do a postdoc with a programming language person in order to expand research horizons, research directions, that would be a suitable application as long as that person had not been the PhD advisor.
So sticking on the topic of mentors, as long as the topic meets the criteria of under the CISE umbrella, does my mentor have to be in a computer science department? And you could look at examples from robotics working with mechanical engineers or computational biology and bioinformatics coming from the biology departments or other things like that.
My understanding is no, that the mentor does not have to be in a computer science department. Computing is a field that's reaching out into many places, and so the mentor can definitely be in other departments. The research has to be under the umbrella of CISE.
If I have already started a postdoc, can I apply for ongoing funding with the same mentor, provided they are different from my PhD advisor?
Sorry, I was reading a question.
It's a continuation. If I have already started a postdoc, can I apply for ongoing funding? So I'm going to take that as the one question.
If you're already in a postdoc, then that postdoc should be funded. I mean, I'm assuming that postdoc is funded. It's not, the intent is not to fund people where there is a funding mechanism already in place. I realize that there could be situations where that's not true, but for those who have an option, you know, the intent is to fund people who are finding themselves with essentially without an option.
We'll clarify this on the fact, but my feeling is that that is not a career building thing to just continue the current postdoc, and so it doesn't meet the spirit of this program.
Thank you. A couple of questions have come up around what does it mean for a first postdoc by our eligibility criteria?
Whose turn is it?
I'll take it. So a first, what does a first postdoc mean? So it means, so after you finish your PhD, if you go into a postdoc position, that's your first postdoc. So I'm trying to think about what might be complicated about that question. So, and maybe part of it is, sometimes people do more than one postdoc. And so that's why there could be a first postdoc and there could be a second postdoc. So if you're in a second postdoc, you are not eligible. Your first postdoc might last for 2 years. So anyway, that's the meaning of first postdoc.
Okay, thank you. There have been some additional questions. Sorry, I'm trying to get through them. Talking about visas, can you please explain what we will or will not be doing with respect to visas?
So CRA will do nothing regarding visas.
Any difference if I propose a mentor who is a junior professor, or will having a full professor as mentor give me better chances?
No difference. The question is the mentor's demonstrated commitment to being a good mentor, and that can cut across all levels of seniority.
If we submit 2 applications with 2 separate mentors, can we give an ordering of preference? Mark?
Yes, there'll be a box where you can have some auxiliary material, and you can give a preference order to your mentors that they will not see.
Okay.
There's a question about whether the research plan should be unique if you have 2 mentors. So we wanted to actually make that flexible. You may submit the same research plan for each of your two mentors. Now the fellowship plan will be different because you will do that collaboratively with each mentor. You also might find that you wanted to specialize the research plan depending on the mentor, particularly if, for example, it meant you were working with someone in a bit of an adjacent area as one potential mentor, and perhaps someone more in the center mainstream of your research history as the other mentor. The mentor can come from your PhD committee. I see that multiple times.
Mark, how are we going to evaluate applicants from traditional computer science versus applicants from more at the intersection with other areas such as social computing or information economics?
Well, we're going to try to do a holistic evaluation. We're currently forming a selection committee of 8 to 10 people who's going to represent a lot of computing, and we will do our best to recognize that there's both traditional areas and that much of the future of computing comes from synergies with other areas.
Ellen, if you see questions, I'm scrolling through to get some unique ones. Several people are asking how many fellowships we expect to award.
So we expect to award at least 49. I see a question about that there's not much time from the official release to the due date. You're right. I mean, much of what's needed, much of the requirements are documented on the website and have been there. So hopefully you didn't wait until the webinar necessarily to begin working on completing those. You know, this is happening at a high rate of speed, and that's to respond to the COVID situation and to have people getting things lined up for the next phase of their career. We are going to allow 2 different start dates for the postdoc, one being in September and the other being in January 2021. So for those of you who perhaps have not finished yet, you could still apply and choose that January start date.
Several people are asking if someone gets awarded a fellowship and then they need to end it in the middle of the fellowship to pursue another program or so forth, can the funding be transferred to someone else? And I think this is a somewhat nuanced answer we probably should give.
Yeah, so my understanding is that you would not be able to transfer the funding. Depending on the situation, we might be able to transfer the funding. You would walk away from the funding.
Yes. Will two applications from the same applicant but with separate mentors be given less weight or evaluated tougher than a single application?
They will not be evaluated tougher than a single application. If you have two mentors, if you propose with two mentors, that gives us some flexibility on the selection side. So just to kind of give you a little window into that, you know, because of this maximum rule about the number of mentors and the number of fellows at a given institution, applying with a second mentor gives us some flexibility when we go to do this this matching process, which, as you can tell, has a number of constraints associated with it.
So there's a question, and I'll take it because it gets to the actual application software. If my research area is between multiple size topics, will there be an option to pick multiple areas? The answer is yes. You can select up to 3 areas, and you do get to prioritize that. And primarily that's so that we can ensure that the right people are reviewing your application who know about those areas. We're going to try and do our best to match them. I'm wondering if the cap of 2 per university can be increased to 5 or something. Otherwise, there might be not even be enough people to get all the awards.
The cap was much debated and will not be increased.
In the letter of support from the mentor, can you explain more about how to provide evidence of a lack of funding for support?
It's nothing more complicated than saying, I don't have funding to support this postdoc. There's another question related to the mentor's commitment, how they would demonstrate their commitment. As an example, if a mentor has previously been involved in any mentor-related activities, that would be a way to demonstrate commitment to mentoring. If the mentor can speak to their experience running their research group, that's another way to demonstrate commitment. Yeah.
Here's a good question. Should the mentor be the exact person assigned to the postdoc in terms of research, or should it be more mentor in terms of professional development?
Well, that is a sophisticated judgment call for you, right? I mean, what you find is there are some people that are technical experts, and there are some people that are people experts, and some of the people expert is a pairwise thing with you. And so there's no simple answer for that. But I guess I would say, just giving personal advice, going for technical expertise only and ignoring other factors is perhaps not the best strategy.
Related on the thread of mentoring, does this award also support the mentor with their project funding?
No, the funding is for the postdoc salary. There's a question about, I'm sorry, about what the cap in overhead means. The mentors will understand that very well. It's the postdoc salary is 75 and nod yes.
Yep.
75K is the postdoc salary. That's the number that you know will matter most to you. The cap on overhead has to do with the institution itself, and mentors will understand that well.
For people who have received NSF funding for pre-doctoral work, will they be given preference for those who haven't?
No, your evaluation will be evaluated with the criteria mentioned on the website.
Looking for unique questions.
The cap is on the number of awards per university, not the number of applications.
Are there any requirements for the application documents such as IEEE format, single column, etc.?
Well, we'll specify something when we finish, but basically no requirements, but don't give us 6-point font.
My job title is research associate because that's how postdocs are classified at my current university, but I'm working as a postdoc in my first position after graduating with a PhD and it's term limited. Am I eligible?
Yes.
Do I need to check with the institution about whether they would accept the postdoc position before I submit the application?
You want to be sure that the mentor is on board to be the mentor, and they are at an institution that would need to accept the funding. But it's hard for me to imagine any U.S. institution that would not agree to accept the funding.
And accept the lower overhead rate.
Will the number of awardees be Will the number of awardees be equally distributed across research areas?
It's not going to be equally distributed in the sense of taking this list of size areas and there being exactly the same number in each of those areas. The intent is to recognize the importance of all the areas that CISE supports and to have a distribution, but that doesn't mean that the distribution will wind up being uniform. You know, there are going to be many more applicants in certain areas than other areas. So the commitment is to a distribution, but not to a uniform distribution.
And it's a holistic process of which diversity of area is one criterion.
Does evidence of prior research success need to be in the proposed area? In other words, if we are proposing new research in an area we haven't worked, will that harm our chances?
I'll take that one. So what you want to do is provide evidence that you're going to be successful in the research that you're proposing. And insofar as your prior work helps to that, it helps. If the work is completely irrelevant, then your proposal will be, it's harder to be sure that you'll be successful.
Can the mentor be a senior or principal research scientist, non-tenure track at a research university? That may be one we have to think about.
Can you ask the question again?
Can the mentor, I just clicked it to the other, hang on 1 second. Can the mentor be a senior researcher, non-tenure track at a research institution?
Senior researcher, non-tenure track, no. I see a question about challenging to travel these days. It's preferable to stay in the same area, but then that's not so great in terms of choosing a mentor. So remember that we are supporting matches where the mentor where the mentor is remote. You are doing the postdoc or beginning the postdoc remotely. And that's exactly because of the challenges of traveling these days. So that's an acceptable way to start and potentially persist through the postdoc experience. I mean, and we all are well aware of the advantages of being in person. but we're also getting pretty good at working over Zoom and other platforms. So we absolutely wanted it to be possible for you to work with a mentor who was not at the same location as you are because of these travel challenges.
Can mentors, similar to the prior question, but a different nuance, can mentors be medical doctors or clinicians or clinical professors if the research falls under the CISE Directorate?
I don't know the answer to that. You got an answer, Ellen?
I think we might need to take this one offline. If they're tenure track at a U.S. university, we have that would meet our criteria. And I'm imagining some people for whom a postdoc with a clinical doctor might be quite a useful postdoc. So I think the tenure track at a U.S. university, if that criteria is met, we haven't scoped the fields in which those mentors must come from. We have not scoped that, meaning we have not restricted that.
Suppose you are taking an industry position for a year and then are interested in returning to academia. Can I apply?
Let's see. I'm not sure. I know if you have a permanent industry position, no, right? If you have an industrial postdoc, then I think that could qualify as your first postdoc. You have a different opinion, Ellen?
No, I think that, I mean, first off, your PhD has to be in the window, but I'm assuming the question was constructed so that the PhD did occur in the window. So I think the answer is no. The program is really meant to, you know, for people who were hoping to be in an academic position for 2020, 2021, and where that was not possible. And so if you, I guess then the corner case is you were in industry, but you were hoping to move to academia, and so then you applied to academic positions and didn't get one. I think if you're in an industry position, that's probably a good place to be for at least a little while. I would not be too eager to give up on that.
Can you explain the products expected to come out of this postdoc? I understand this is unique to each project, but what does the CRA and NSF wish? Number of publications, marketable material?
I think this is a good example where you should go to the NSF guidelines on intellectual merit and broader impacts. And you know, there's no simple formula, and it's certainly not something stupid like number of publications. You know, the intellectual impact has to do with, you know, changing the world in your narrow way, perhaps. And the broader impacts are affecting people more broadly. But the NSF guide articulates it very well.
May I just add to that you know, Margaret spoke to the community and the community caring about one another. That's the computing research community that she's referring to, right? So the idea here, I mean, the point here is that through no fault of anyone's, you know, it's without some action, potentially quite a few people who have been in the pipeline towards a computing research career will fall out of that pipeline because they don't have an option that allows them to bridge between now and whenever things are some semblance of normal, at least with respect to hiring. So and then given that, I think Mark used the language which I very much like. It's not about treading water. I mean, this is the intent is you use this time period to strengthen your record, your capabilities, your you know, your potential to be a successful member of the computing research community going forward. And you know, to the extent that for many of you that will mean an an intention or desire to be in an academic position, there are many things that a professor needs to be able to do besides write research papers to be successful. And so some portion of that time you may spend, you probably should spend, on honing skills and getting experiences that would allow you to be prepared for the many kinds of activities that a professor engages in, including things like supervising more junior students, possibly grant writing experience, potentially involvement in teaching. So the range of things that will let you grow as a computing researcher, and particularly a computing researcher who might be aiming to head for academia.
Here's one I'm going to take procedurally. How will letter of recommendations be submitted? This is actually the piece we're working on to make sure it's as seamless as possible, and we think we have the best solution. You will be submitting your letter writers' names and email addresses, and then they will get a separate email to submit the letter on your behalf. So you as the applicant will not see the letter that they submit. However, once they submit the letter, you then will have to go back to your application and hit finalize. So there is a bit of a two-step process in there, but that also enables you to see whether or not they haven't submitted. There will be in the FAQs the email address that the letter will come from, so that you can provide all of that information as well. For Mark.
There's a question about maternity, graduating 2017, due to maternity, started the postdoc January 2018, finishing in December 2020. So that meets the criteria.
Yeah, finishing the first postdoc now.
The first postdoc in the time window. So I think that eligibility question is immediately, the answer is yes.
I have one for Mark. Would a mentor being from a better ranked university increase my chance of selection over a mentor from a lower ranked university?
No, we will look to see how good the match is on the programs. So I don't think that's the case.
Again, I'm looking through for unique. Ellen, if you see others.
There are a number of questions about the visa process. You know, you may find it helpful to talk to your Office of International Education if you are at a place that has an Office of International Education. You know, they know a lot about visas. Your proposed mentor may also know some things about the visa situation.
And can a mentor be a part of two applications?
I remember there are no restrictions on the number of applications that a mentor is involved in. A mentor will be selected for at most one application.
Can a mentor be tenure track scientist in a national lab? Like Fermi Labs?
Let us hang on to that one. I think that has some things in common with the question about tenure track in a was it Cold Spring Harbor? Let us hold that question and answer it on the website.
Time to wrap up, Ellen?
Thanks.
I'm
just doing a quick look through.
to see if there's anything.
Does the other recommender, as in the second letter writer, need to be a university professor, academic person, or a US person?
No, they need to be a person that gives a strong alternate perspective into your likely success at this program.
Is there any availability of relocation funding? If not, should the mentor mention the use of university funds for this?
There is no relocation funding. It's not necessary to mention it in the application. There's a couple of questions about whether the limit is per university or per department in the university. It's per university.
Here's one that's somewhat different. If a graduating PhD student receives funding, so becomes a CI fellow, can they still teach a course at the university?
Absolutely, as long as it follows the rules of the university. Some universities want you to be required, you need to be paid to teach a course, and that may be an issue. But we would certainly like to encourage people to develop in many aspects of their academic career. Elian, you look like you might answer it differently.
No, I think that answer
We're
is
trying
fine.
to read, yeah.
I think that answer is fine. Teaching a class is super time consuming. So you just, you want to talk with your mentor. If it turns out that's a good use of your time, then go for it. But realize that it's time consuming.
Might I recommend teaching a unit, like 4 or 5 lectures and associated homework?
Here's one that we haven't seen anything like. How are benefits such as insurance and so forth covered? Are those covered by the indirect fringe part of the award, or the postdoc has to pay from their 75K salary?
Those are the indirect that goes to the institution hosting you, that you then have the benefits that they provide, that institution provides.
Actually, this is probably a very good question to end on. Will it be left up to awardees and mentors to figure out how they want to navigate a remote or hybrid arrangement, or will the funding agency dictate how this will be handled?
This will be left up to the mentor and the mentee to figure out. You can get advice from anybody you want. We are certainly not going to put rules on this because we appreciate this world situation is rapidly evolving.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're at the end of time. And do you want to sort of wrap up with what will happen, remind people what will happen with the questions, for example, that we didn't get to?
Sure. So we want to thank everyone. Hopefully we've tried to answer as broad a swath of questions as able. We will be looking through all the questions, and within 48 hours, so by Thursday evening, we will have posted, maybe sooner, giving us depending on what's happening, but we will post the full recording of this webinar and go through the questions, and be sure to post answers both to ones that we've answered online but feel need to be spelled out more succinctly, and ones that we did not get to. Going from there, the application link should be up no later than Monday, and we expect to have applications due, as we said earlier, in mid-June. We are not going to give definitive dates at this point because we still are trying to work through a few kinks, but that is our intention. So please be checking back regularly for the actual application. You've got all of the requirements that are needed, and you can be working on it, preparing for it, getting your mentors lined up, thinking about your project, and so forth. So with that, it's a minute after the hour. Go right ahead, Ellen.
I just want to say thank you all for your interest in the program and for your thoughtful questions. You're already part of our community, our computing research community, and we know it's a tough time, and we hope that all of you are able to hang in there, and that this program does provide a bridge for some portion of those in the pipeline. wish it could be everybody. So. All right. Thanks very much,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you, Anne and others, for managing the process.